Welcome to the Big Hollow Shooting Range Certification course. This is the training course required for anyone wishing to acquire a membership to use the shooting range at Big Hollow Recreation Area near Sperry, Iowa. Upon completion of this course, you will be tested on your knowledge of the information provided. Upon successful completion of the test, you may purchase a membership to the range. For questions regarding range memberships or for more information about the range or any other Des Moines County Conservation facility, contact our main office at 319-753-8260 or visit us online at dmcconservation.com. Now let's begin. We'll start with range policies and procedures, as well as some general information about the park and the range itself. All range users are required to be certified by taking one of these range certification courses. In-person classes are offered several times per year, and those course dates can be found on the Des Moines County Conservation website. Each certified member that pays their annual fee is issued a certification card, which they then must carry with them every time they visit the range. As long as the annual fee is paid each year, members are not required to take the full course over again. There are 3 levels of range membership. The first is a family membership, which costs $30 per year. With a family membership, the head of household is the card holder and may bring members of their immediate household with them anytime they visit the range. However, the card holder of a family membership must be present during each visit. Spouses may each serve as card holders as long as both spouses have passed the certification course. The second level of range membership is an individual membership, which costs $25 per year. This level of membership allows the individual to use the range anytime it is not reserved. The third and final level of membership is a lifetime membership, which costs $500. A lifetime membership is an individual membership and must be renewed every year, but no payment is required after the initial lifetime membership fee has been paid. Certified range members must sign a release form and agree to abide by all rules and regulations governing the use of the Big Hollow shooting range. Members must have a current certification card present with them whenever the ranges are being used. Certified members may bring 1 guest per range visit. All range users, including guests, must sign in and out of the shooting range at the registration building between the 50 and 100 yard range every time they use the range. All members must renew their range memberships annually. There is a 90-day grace period for annual memberships. After that 90 days, the certification course must be taken again in order to recertify to use the range. An annual refresher course is required of all members renewing their certification. The refresher course generally consists of bits of pertinent information regarding range use and safety procedures, updated range policies, and a short questionnaire or survey to collect information from range members and to ensure each member understood the provided information. Please note that Des Moines County Conservation reserves the right to refuse membership to anyone for any reason. Next, we'll discuss how to get to the range. But first, a quick note. Remember, to legally transport firearms in the state of Iowa, all guns must be secured, unloaded in a fastened container or case, or broken down completely. The ammunition must be stored separately from the case in which the firearm is contained. Please refer to the Code of Iowa for laws governing the transport of firearms. Range location. Big Hollow Recreation Area is located about 10 miles north of Burlington, a few miles off of Highway 61. To get there, you'll travel north out of Burlington on Highway 61 and then turn west onto Pleasant Grove Road. Brown signs along the highway will notify you where to turn. Go 3 miles west down Pleasant Grove Road and look for the signs that point you south down 152nd Avenue. Travel 1 mile south down 152nd and you'll arrive at the park entrance. For mapping or navigation apps or for directions coming from a different direction other than Burlington, the address to use is 18853 152nd Avenue, Sperry, Iowa 52650. You'll know you're in the right place when you see the Big Hollow sign off to the right of the entrance. However, the local dogs probably won't be there to greet you. Please note that Big Hollow Recreation Area is a multi-use park. Immediately outside of the shooting range, the area is open to public for hunting, hiking, and other outdoor recreation activities. please keep this in mind when you visit the area and use the shooting range. The park entrance is a four-way stop with signs pointing to the various park amenities, one being the shooting range. Turn right at this four-way stop and travel about 0.8 miles west on Big Hollow Drive. You'll arrive at the range, which is located at 15846 Big Hollow Drive. You'll know you've reached the right place when you see this sign and flagpole at the entrance to the shooting range complex. The Big Hollow Shooting Range complex consists of 4 separate shooting ranges: a 25-yard range, a 50-yard range, a 100-yard range, and a 300-meter range. All ranges are open from sunrise to 1/2 hour before sunset daily. However, please note that Des Moines County Conservation reserves the right to limit the time of operations of the ranges at its discretion. The 25-yard range features a 10-person covered firing line with multiple shooting benches. The 25-yard range is the only range within the complex where you can shoot from positions in front of the shelter. In other words, on the 25-yard range only, you can walk up closer to the targets and shoot from any distance between the target and the firing shelter. Just be sure to communicate with other range users to ensure that no firearms are ever being handled or shot while other shooters are downrange. On all other ranges within the complex, shooting may only be done from the firing line within the covered shelters. The 50-yard range sits just west of the 25-yard range. It features a 10-person covered firing line and multiple shooting benches. The 100-yard range is directly south of the 50-yard range and is oriented to the west. It also features a 10-person covered firing line and multiple benches. The 300-meter range is just south of the 100-yard range, but its firing line is accessed by going straight south at the entrance to the range complex instead of turning west to go to the other 3 ranges. Centerfire rifles with bottleneck cartridges are the only type of firearm that may be used on the 300-meter range. Why? Because the bullets from those type of firearms are the only ones with a flat enough trajectory to stay below the height of the side berms. Projectiles from lower velocity firearms would have to arc above the berm height in order to hit on target at that distance. Thus, for safety reasons, we restrict the type of firearms and ammunition at the 300-meter range. Somewhat behind and to the south and west of the 300-meter range is a 3D archery course operated by the Flint River Bowhunters Club via a cooperative agreement with Des Moines County Conservation. To be safe, the 300-meter range is closed during club-organized events on the archery range. These events are generally held once a month, spring until fall. Range usage and availability. For certified shooters, the ranges will be available to them and their families anytime the ranges are not reserved. Only certified shooters may use the ranges outside of organized, approved range reservations. Signs are posted throughout the shooting range complex notifying visitors that only certified shooters may use the ranges. The signs also note that all shooters must sign in and out and that all shooters must have proof of certification with them whenever they use the range. We count on our range members to ensure that everyone follows the rules at the Big Hollow Shooting Range. For more information or to report violations, please contact Des Moines County Conservation using the information provided on the signs throughout the park. The Big Hollow Shooting Range may be reserved by organized clubs and groups. As such, the ranges are used regularly by organizations such as scout groups and youth shooting sports clubs. As a general rule, no organization is allowed to reserve ranges for more than 8 hours per month unless special arrangements are made with the department. Each group reserving a range must provide proof of insurance and must have one or more competent range instructors present at all times. The fee for reservation is $40 per 4 hours of reservation per range. The Big Hollow shooting ranges are used quite often by law enforcement organizations. Again, the department tries to keep reservations to no more than 8 hours per month unless special arrangements are made. Each organization must provide proof of insurance and must have a competent range instructor present at all times at each range being used. The same $40 per 4 hours of reservation fee structure applies. The one and only exception to the certified shooter requirement at the Big Hollow ranges are for active military personnel. Military personnel on active duty are not required to pay the annual fee or take the shooting range certification class. Active military using the Big Hollow ranges must have their active duty military ID with them in lieu of their certification card. Non-active or retired military personnel are required to take the certification course and pay the annual fee the same as any other range member. Reserving ranges. Qualifying organizations may reserve 2 ranges at one time. However, organizations may not reserve the 25 and 50-yard ranges simultaneously. Organizations also may not reserve the 100-yard and 300-meter ranges simultaneously. This allows for one short and one long range to be available during nearly every reservation. Organizations may not reserve ranges on weekends without special approval by the Director of the Conservation Department. The Des Moines County Conservation Board may waive one or more of these requirements upon request by the reserving organization. Such requests are reviewed on a case-by-case basis by the board at its regular monthly meetings. All range reservations are posted online at dmcconservation.com and on signboards at the range. All range visitors are encouraged to check for range reservations before heading to the Big Hollow shooting range. Range reservations may be found online at www.dmcconservation.com or by calling the main office at 319-753-8260 during our regular business hours. Now let's review some standard shooting range terminology. Each range at the Big Hollow Shooting Complex is contained within earthen berms. The berms to the left and right that run parallel to the direction of fire are called side berms. The taller berm just behind the target frames is called the termination berm. This is where every shot fired on the range must impact. The front edge of each covered shelter is considered the firing line. No one is to be in front of this line at any time when firearms are loaded or are actively being fired. Keep in mind that the firing line may be downrange on the 25-yard range depending on where the shooting is being done. Remember, the 25-yard range is the only range where shooters may shoot from any distance between the target and the shelter. This requires everyone on that range to be aware of where the firing line is at all times. We consider the firing line as extending back into the area where you shoot from. No one is to be in front of this line when firearms are loaded or when people are shooting. Additionally, no one may handle firearms anywhere other than on the firing line. Big Hollow is an unstaffed range. Therefore, someone must act as the range officer whenever multiple shooters are using the range simultaneously. Generally, this is the first person that arrives to that particular range. The range officer establishes communication with other shooters, controls the movement of shooters using agreed-upon standard range commands, and checks that all firearms actions are open and safe when active shooting is not being conducted. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure that everyone on the shooting range acts safely and follows all range and safety procedures at all times. The range officer simply is the person designated to control the movement on the range. Some standard range commands you may hear at the Big Hollow shooting range include the following. Range is hot. This means that shooters may handle their firearms on the firing line. They may also handle their firearms in the ready area provided the actions are open or otherwise made safe. Load only on the firing line. At all times, the basic firearm safety rules must be observed. These are 1. Always keep the firearm pointed in a safe direction. 2. Always keep your finger out of the trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. And 3. Always keep the gun unloaded until you're ready to use it. Range is cold. This means that the range is closed with respect to handling any firearms either on the line or in the ready area. All firearms are to be cleared, magazines removed, and actions open or made safe. Long guns must be racked. Handguns may be placed on the bench with the action exposed for verification by all present. All shooters, after benching their firearms, must step back from the firing line so that others know that their firing station has been made safe. Commence firing. This command should be given by the acting range officer after the range is declared hot. It informs the shooters present that they may begin firing at authorized targets. Cease fire. Whenever this command is given, all shooters must immediately stop shooting, remain in position with the firearm pointed in a safe direction, and wait for further instructions from the acting range officer. Note, this command may be given by anyone who observes an unsafe condition on the range or who notices any situation for which firing needs to cease. A ceasefire command needs to be heeded immediately whenever it is given by anyone on the range. On the shooting range, safety is everyone's primary objective. To be safe on the shooting range, all members must adhere to the following. Always keep the muzzle of a firearm pointed in a safe direction at all times. Treat all firearms as if they were loaded at all times. Be sure you have the proper ammunition for the firearm you're using. Before shooting, always check for a bore obstruction or any defects or damage to the firearm or ammunition. All unsafe action on the range must be stopped and corrected immediately. Never use a firearm that is malfunctioning or in need of repair. All inexperienced shooters must be accompanied by an experienced shooter. Now let's discuss the range regulations specific to the Big Hollow shooting range. Number 1. All shooters must be certified and have their certification card with them at all times. As noted earlier, the first person on any given range becomes the range officer. Card holders are allowed to bring one guest per visit to the range. Any range user may ask to see another range user's certification card to ensure that they are, in fact, certified to use the shooting range. If at any time you suspect someone is using the range that shouldn't be, please notify Des Moines County Conservation using the contact information posted at the park. 2. All range users, including guests, must sign in and out of the ranges using the forms provided in the brown building between the 50 and 100-yard ranges. The sign-in forms simply ask for basic information, including the date and time you visited, what ranges you used, the types of firearms, and your name and certification card number. This information allows Des Moines County Conservation to collect range usage data, which it uses to justify budgets and development plans for the range. Additionally, in the event of an incident, department personnel can refer to this information to see who might have information to report. As mentioned before, we count on our members to keep tabs on the range, and so we count on them to help us catch anyone that might act carelessly and jeopardize the future use of the ranges. 3. Range users may only use the target frames or reactive targets provided by Des Moines County Conservation at the ranges. All target frames must remain where they are installed. Only paper targets may be affixed to the target backing provided within the frames. 4. All bullets and projectiles must impact the termination burn. There are homes and people beyond the ranges, and bullets can literally travel for miles. Therefore, all shots fired must terminate at the termination burn. 5. Shooters must always know their target, use good judgment, and be extremely cautious of what may be beyond their target. Again, be aware that there are homes and people beyond the range, and stray bullets from the range can cause damage to life and property. Aside from this being a major safety issue, such incidents will most certainly jeopardize the future use of the ranges. Once again, be aware that there are homes and people beyond the shooting range, and stray bullets from the range can cause damage to life and property. Individuals found to be intentionally or unintentionally shooting over berms will be prosecuted under Code of Iowa Section 724.30, Reckless Use of a Firearm. Persons found guilty under this code section may face felony charges, large fines, and/or prison terms. 6. All loaded firearms must be pointed downrange at the termination berm at all times. This is in keeping with the primary rules of firearm safety that states shooters must always keep the muzzle of the firearm pointed in a safe direction at all times. 7. All firearms shall be unloaded with the action open until ready to fire. This includes during any time when the range is deemed cold. 8. All firing shall be done from the firing line on the 50-yard, 100-yard, and 300-meter ranges. 9. On the 25-yard range, shooters may move forward as a group under the direction of the established range officer. This is the only range at which shooters can shoot at shorter distances other than those where the covered shooting line is. 10. Only shooters, spotters, and coaches are allowed on the firing line when it is in operation. Spectators are to stay behind the firing line at all times. 11. All barrels should be checked for a bore obstruction before firing. Malfunctioning firearms should not be used, and only legal firearms are allowed on the shooting range. No illegal firearms or ammunition are allowed anywhere at the Big Hollow Shooting Range complex. 12. All unsafe acts or situations on a range shall be corrected immediately. 13. Any person may call ceasefire at any time they see an unsafe situation or act. 14. Upon the command ceasefire, all firearms are to be unloaded immediately and every shooting station made safe. 15. Eye and ear protection is required to be worn by everyone on the firing line during active shooting. 16. Dry firing is permitted on the firing line only. Dry firing is considered active firing and is to be treated as such at the shooting range. 17. Make sure the correct ammunition for the firearm is being used. 18. Inexperienced shooters must be accompanied by an experienced shooter. 19. All shooters should clean their target and firing station when they have completed firing. 20. When shooters go downrange to change targets and score, the range officer must control movement by using standard range commands and communicating clearly with the other shooters on the range. 21. Clay pigeon shooting is not allowed on ranges except during Des Moines County Conservation sponsored events. 22. During heavy range usage, there will be a 30-minute time limit. 23. Des Moines County Conservation reserves the right to close the shooting range at any time. General area regulations include the following. These apply to the area within and around the shooting range complex. Loud or abusive language will not be permitted. Drugs or alcoholic beverages, or shooters under the influence of such substances, are prohibited at the shooting range complex. During heavy use, vehicles should be carefully parked, permitting all vehicles to exit the range area in a safe manner. We ask that all shooters and range users stay on the walkways. Please pick up any trash or debris in the shooting area. Security and enforcement. Disregard for and failure to adhere to range or general area regulations will automatically and immediately disqualify the offender from using the shooting range indefinitely. Des Moines County Conservation will make every effort to provide safety and security for the shooting range, and Des Moines County Conservation will strictly enforce all rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. The range area is fenced and posted with clear signage, including signs that say, "Danger, no trespassing, shooting range," and "Stop, only certified shooters may use ranges." Violators will be prosecuted under Code of Iowa Section 461A.44, Prohibited Areas. As mentioned earlier, individuals found to be intentionally or unintentionally shooting over berms will be prosecuted under Code of Iowa Section 724.30, Reckless Use of a Firearm. The range will be supervised when in operation at all times. Range supervision is the responsibility of the range members using the range. The Des Moines County Conservation Board will determine the penalty or punishment on reported violations other than those covered by public law. These rules and regulations apply to the Big Hollow Shooting Range only. Other ranges may have different rules and use policies. Disregard for and failure to adhere to range safety rules and regulations will automatically and immediately disqualify the offender from using the shooting range indefinitely. Lead exposure. A large number of health issues have been linked to lead exposure. Since most common firearm ammunition contains lead, range users are encouraged to take precautions during and after range use. These include: never handle large quantities of lead without safety equipment. Never eat or drink while using the range. Always wash hands with cold soapy water immediately after using the range. A water hydrant is provided between the shelter house and check-in building near the 50-yard range. It is available from April to October for this purpose. Range funding. All revenue, including range fees generated within Big Hollow, is retained by Des Moines County Conservation for future maintenance and capital improvements within the park. Donations have made it possible to get the ranges where they are today. In fact, the most recent developments of the 25-yard range, the raising of the berms on all 4 ranges, and the improvements to the shelter houses all were made possible through donations, volunteers, and the revenue generated from range fees. Tax-deductible charitable donations may be made through Partners for Conservation Foundation, a local organization that supports the efforts of Des Moines County Conservation. Now let's get a little deeper into firearm safety. The 4 laws of firearm safety could be viewed like this. First, treat every firearm as if it were loaded at all times. Doing so will then, hopefully, ensure that you follow law number 2, which is to never point a gun at anything you are not willing to destroy. Number 3, keep your finger off of the trigger and outside of the trigger guard until your sights are on the target and you're ready to shoot. And 4, make sure of your target and what's behind it. Remember, all shots fired on the range must impact the termination berm and nowhere else. Range safety. A positive attitude is a critical element in firearm safety. Accidental discharges can happen. Therefore, the best safe firearm handling is to always point the muzzle in a safe direction. That way, should something unexpected happen and the firearm goes off, the only damage done will be to your ego. Remember, eye and ear protection is required on the shooting range. Before you start shooting, be sure to check for a bore obstruction and be sure to visually check the chamber of your firearm before you load and after you unload to ensure that the gun is in fact unloaded. Anytime guns are being handled on the range, their muzzles should always be pointed downrange. When not actively firing, the actions of all firearms should be open and empty. Remember, the term cold range means that no active firing is occurring, that all guns are unloaded with actions open and secured safely, and that it is okay for range users to go downrange. A range is considered hot when shooters are actively firing or otherwise handling firearms. When the range is hot, eye and ear protection is required for everyone on the firing line, and no one is allowed to move forward of the firing line until all users present confirm that the range has been made cold again. Simply engaging a firearm's mechanical safety does not make any gun safe as far as the rules of gun handling are concerned. A mechanical safety is used simply to supplement safe gun handling in the field. Regardless of whether the safety is on or even whether the gun is unloaded, the fundamental rules of safe gun handling still apply. There are 4 situations you may encounter when firing on the shooting range. The first is when you pull the trigger and nothing happens. This can be one of 2 things. It can be a misfire, in which case the shot never goes off at all. Or it could be a hang fire, in which case you've pulled the trigger, nothing happens for a while, but then the gun goes off. In either case, should you find yourself in this situation, be sure to keep the gun pointed safely. Hold it pointed downrange for a full minute. If after a full minute nothing happens, keep the gun pointed safe and unload it. The second situation you may encounter is called a cook-off. This is where a gun's chamber and barrel become too hot and the powder ignites when a new round is cycled into the chamber. This is a very unsafe situation. Should you find yourself in this situation, cease firing immediately, put the gun down and let it cool off before resuming firing. The third situation is called a slam fire. This is a mechanical failure of the firearm in which when a new round is cycled into the chamber, the process of the action closing causes the ammunition to go off and causes the firearm to discharge unintentionally. The fourth and final situation we're going to talk about today is a squib load. and this is where you pull the trigger, the gun goes off, but with less power than what it should have based on the ammunition that you're using. This is a dangerous situation in that the projectile may not have left the barrel. If you notice a squib load while you're firing, cease firing immediately. Do not shoot another round, as there may be a barrel obstruction. Unload the firearm and check to make sure that there is no bore obstruction. Handling ammunition safely. Always make sure you have the proper ammunition for your particular firearm and only use one type of firearm at a time on the range so you don't mistakenly mix up different types of ammo. For example, a 20 gauge shot shell will fit down a 12 gauge barrel, but it'll get stuck about halfway, creating a bore obstruction while still leaving plenty of space behind it to fit a 12 gauge shell. The 12 gauge shell will fire if you pull the trigger, causing the barrel to explode and creating a major incident for all involved. Similarly, many rifle and pistol rounds look and feel very similar in size and shape. Some will even fit just fine into magazines and into guns they're not designed for. Again, this is a very unsafe situation that can be avoided by paying careful attention to the type of firearm and ammunition you use. Be sure to take care when loading and unloading any firearm, as these are the times when it's easy to fumble or drop the ammo. These are also the most likely times when accidents can occur. Fumbling around for dropped ammo can cause you to lose focus on where the gun is pointed or how you're handling it, potentially creating an unsafe situation. When training new shooters, it is best to first teach them about the firearm and how to handle it safely while it's empty with no live ammunition present. Once the new shooter is comfortable with the firearm's mechanics and how to safely and properly handle it, begin using live ammunition by loading only one round at a time. Once they're comfortable with that, you can load more and allow them to shoot multiple shots. Just be sure that the student is comfortable with each step in the process before moving on to the next. Give yourselves plenty of time and don't try to rush into it. Getting in a hurry or losing that positive attitude is when accidents happen. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you are not familiar with a particular firearm, take the time to learn about it before trying to shoot it. If it is a firearm someone handed to you, have them show you how it works and how to properly handle it. If it's a new one you just acquired, take the time to study the manuals or learn from someone that is familiar with that particular model. Do this before you ever try to fire it on the range. As mentioned before, a positive attitude is the key to range safety. All the training in the world and all the boring narrated slideshows ever created won't do you or anyone any good unless you have the positive attitude to apply the information correctly. Safety depends on the personal responsibility of every shooter. As we near the end of this course, here are a few other general range safety points we'd like to note. When sighting in a new firearm, start at the shorter ranges. Get to where you can hit where you want at short distances before you move to the longer distances. This will ensure you know where all your shots are going, even if they're not perfectly dialed in yet. Always be sure that your bullets impact determination burn. We cannot stress that enough. This ties directly to the firearm safety rule of always knowing your target and what's beyond it. Only paper targets are allowed at the Big Hollow shooting range. No bottles, cans, jugs, tannerite, or steel silhouettes or reactive targets of any kind are allowed. Des Moines County Conservation sometimes provides metal gongs on the longer ranges and rubber reactive targets on the 25-yard range. Please leave those targets where you found them, but be sure to remove any paper, trash, spent cartridges, and other debris from your target and shooting station before you leave. Try to leave the range in better condition than you found it. If you ever find yourself in a situation where others are handling firearms carelessly, or are blatantly violating range rules or in any way being unsafe, remove yourself from the situation and report it immediately. All shooters should be courteous to others around them. Remember, semi-automatic firearms throw spent brass, revolvers expel side gases, and black powder firearms create all sorts of smoke. These factors, as well as others, can affect those around you. Keep that in mind and be respectful of your fellow shooters. Shotgun patterning is allowed on the 25-yard range. No other shotgun shooting, including clay bird shooting, is allowed at the Big Hollow shooting ranges. Shotgun shooting slugs are allowed on any range except the 300-meter range. That concludes this range safety course. Your next step in the certification process is to stop out at the Des Moines County Conservation Office to take the test and pay your membership fee. After that, you're free to use the range. On behalf of the Des Moines County Conservation Department and the Shooting Range Advisory Committee, I thank you for taking the time to go through this course, and we look forward to seeing you on the range.